Okay, so you will see keystrokes at the bottom of the screen. Ask questions if I go too fast and nothing makes sense. But basically, we're going to go over um, transitions, taking AI or Adobe Illustrator layers and turning those into shape layers in After Effects, trim paths to draw stuff on, the wiggle expression, and how track mattes work. So first off, importing stuff into After Effects. So you're going to open up a new After Effects thing. You're going to go to File, New. Nope, sorry, you're going to go to File, Import File, or Command I. And this is really important. You want to single click on the Illustrator or Photoshop file, and then you change Import As to Composition Retain Layer Sizes. If you leave it as footage, it'll smash it into a single image. And so when you do that, you're going to get two things. One of them is your composition, and the other one is a folder that has each high-level layer separated out. And so if you click on each one of these, it'll give you a little preview. But it's really important that everybody names things because there's no thumbnail preview there. So you just have to name everything. I'm just going to double click on this composition, but you might open your own composition. If you open your own composition, you can go to New Composition. And then in this window, you've got your width and your height, you got your frame rate, and your duration. Those are the main things that you need to worry about. Your background color will not export. So you can change this to whatever you want, but no matter what you change it to, it will be black when it exports. So if you want a different color behind everything, that needs to be a layer in After Effects. Then once you have that down in your timeline, you basically have like your timeline and all of your layers, and just like everything else, stuff that's higher up is above and stuff that's down below is underneath. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to show you some of the easier stuff. So if I came in here like this, in After Effects, this is called the anchor point. In Illustrator, the anchor point is a change in direction on a vector path. In After Effects, it's the origin of each layer. And so everything will happen around that anchor point. So if I rotate like this, it rotates around that anchor point. If I scale, it scales towards and away from that anchor point. So the first thing that's really important to do is this tool right up here is Y, and that's the pan behind tool. It's actually called the anchor point tool, but you hit Y and then you can relocate this anchor point. So I'm going to move this down here like this. Okay. Now I could come in and you've got transform controls. These transform controls, don't animate the anchor point, just leave that alone. Move it in the composition or the preview window, but don't touch it in the transform because it'll always mess you up. Position is where that layer is, X, Y, with the origin of that being in the upper left-hand corner. Scale is 100% is what it was imported as. And so if I go smaller or larger, it's just based on that first import size. Rotation has two different things. So right here, this is the number of full rotations, 360 degrees. This is the number of partial rotations. And so if I just rotate it 45 degrees, right, then I can go like that and that shows up here. But if I rotate it one full rotation, it looks like it doesn't move because it's actually gone all the way around and is back where it was before. So right now it's one full rotation and 46 degrees. Opacity is also a percentage like scale, but unlike scale, you can't get more invisible than 0 and you can't get more opaque than 100. So it's just 0 to 100. So those are the basic transform controls. That's everything there, right? If you want to animate something with keyframes, then you click on one of these. So if I want to go to rotation, I'm going to move this back to 0, 0. Okay, and we'll zoom out just a little bit more. So this is my playhead. This is what's showing up here. And if I turn this on by clicking on it, it creates a keyframe there with whatever information was there at the time that I clicked on that, and it gives me these controls. And so now I can come in and I can move my playhead and make a change, and now it will animate in between those two keyframes. So that's the basic way to do that. If I wanted to change the position, then I would turn position on, move the playhead, change the position. You'll see this little line tells you how many actual frames are in between those keyframes. Then if I press the space bar, it's going to rotate and drift. If I want these to happen faster, I move them together. If I want them to happen slower, I move them further apart. Good on basics? Okay. Cool. I'm going to kill these. So let's go back to the beginning here. Now, in the stuff that we're doing, I don't need this to be any specific thing, but I do want it to move. So I'm going to add a wiggle expression to it. So to add an expression, you go in and you Option or Alt click on the stopwatch. And that opens up your expression menu. If you don't hold Option or Alt when you click, it'll delete all of your keyframes. So that's kind of a really important thing to remember. And then you don't need to remember the code exactly how it is, because as you start typing it, it'll start suggesting it. And so you can just hit return and it'll fill it out for you, because capitalizations and spaces and punctuation matter. It'll break if you get those wrong. In the wiggle expression, it's a random number generator. And the first number is how many times per second it generates that number. And the second number is the amount. So that's called frequency, is how many times per second, comma, amplitude is the range in which you're going to do it. So right now, I'm going to say, let's go twice a second, comma, 45 degrees. And then if you hit return, then it gives you a new line. So you don't want to hit return. You want to click above this to get out of that text box. So whenever you're editing an expression, if you hit return, it's a new line of code. You have to click out of it. So I'm going to click out of it, and then I can press my space bar, and without any keyframes, it's randomly moving. Yeah.
So we don't need to put any keyframes if we use any of the transform, like the wiggle.
Yeah, if you're using expressions to do it, you can add keyframes and have an expression, or you can have keyframes, or you can have an expression. Not all expressions will work without keyframes, like loop out needs keyframes, but wiggle doesn't need keyframes. So, yeah. So that's how I do that on rotation. Let me show you how I do it on position. So let's say that I want, I'm going to press spacebar again. Let's say that I want this, this to kind of move around. So I don't think I did that correctly. Let me go back to my Illustrator file here. Where did I put that? Oh, it's right there. And I was going really fast, so I didn't pay attention to separating these out. Yeah, that's on center point. Okay, so here's a problem. So I have these different layers. You can see these different layers. These all got flattened into a single layer because I didn't separate them out. Only high-level layers, this first indentation gets separated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to grab this and put it on its own layer. There we go, main frame, and then what's this one? Okay, so these are probably all, yeah. So then I'm going to grab this one. That's that. Okay. And put that on its own layer. Okay. And then I'm going to grab the rest of these. And I'm going to put them on their own layer. Boxes. All right. So, and I don't need those to be separated. Okay, so now I'm going to save it. was a legacy format apparently. And I'll come back over here, re-import. Now the reason I'm re-importing is you can make minor changes to an Illustrator file after it's been imported, but any major changes will break After Effects because there's a pixel grid that happens at the time of import, and if anything goes outside of that pixel grid, it changes everything and it's broken. So single click, composition, retain layer sizes, open. Okay, so heads up display. All right, so I'm gonna grab this gradient here, and I'm just gonna move it up and down. Actually, I'll move it right to left. So I'm gonna twirl into the transform controls, and you'll notice that position has two numbers. And so if I put a wiggle expression, alt click, wiggle, 3 times a second, move 50 pixels, it's gonna go all over the place. So it's going on the X and the Y axis randomly. But if I just want it to do one of those, then I need to right click on position and separate dimensions. And now what you'll see is I have an X position that's gonna go horizontal and a Y position that goes vertical. And so now, just on one of these, we'll do X, I can come in and I can say wiggle, enter, 5 times a second, move 100 pixels. That's gonna go kind of fast and crazy. And so I press space and it's randomly moving around. Now if I wanna slow this down, then which number do I need to change?
The left number.
Yeah, the first one, right? And so I can change this to 1, and then it'll be once a second, and now it's moving much slower. If I want it to move more, then I would change the second number, that's the amplitude, and so now it's moving further. So I'm kind of just going back and forth like that. I can also do fractions of numbers, so if I really wanted to slow this down, I can change the frequency to a decimal and say 0.3, and then every 3 seconds, it'll randomly generate, roughly, randomly generate a new number. Good on wiggle? Okay, so we can wiggle rotate. I could also do any of these other ones. So I could go opacity, wiggle, and let's say we want it to like flicker kind of crazy, so go 10 times a second, 100. Okay, and so this is now just going to kind of flicker. It's just randomly generating any number between 0 and 100 10 times a second.
So can you apply wiggle to follow the basic transformation where it
Mhm.
does? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so it'll work on position, it'll work on scale, rotation, and opacity. Yeah, so wiggle is just, so what it is opacity is a percent, rotation is a degree, scale is a percent, and position is pixels. And so whatever this number produces just goes and becomes pixels or percent or degrees. So it just generates a random number and then whatever that is. Okay, so that'll give you a lot of your movement is just a wiggle expression on something. And so if something's just kind of randomly needs to move, just put a wiggle expression on it, adjust the speed with the first number and the amount with the second number, frequency and amplitude, and then you can kind of, it'll just sort of randomly just keep doing that for the length of the timeline. Questions on that?
So if you do it for scale, you can make it like lower and raise and wiggle back.
Yeah.
Wiggle the height.
Yeah, and so for scale, to my knowledge, I don't think you can, how do you say that? I don't think you can separate dimensions. So it'll do both. Let me kill these really quick. So we just have,
For scale?
can you separate dimensions on
For
scale?
expression or for?
Can
just
I?
like the chain link next to it.
Yes, but if I'm putting an expression, a wiggle expression inside of that, I think you could probably do like an array in the expression and then do a variable inside of one of those arrays that gives you the first one, but that gets a little complicated.
I've never used it.
Yeah, if you go wiggle to 100, then it'll get bigger and smaller.
Oh, gotcha. But it won't like lower raise. Or do you have to track mat that then?
Yeah, so if you wanted it to go up and down, I'll do that right now. So let's say we wanted this bar to go up and down but not exceed the boundaries of this bar, right? So on my Y position, I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to go wiggle. Let's go 2 times a second, and I'm going to measure that's probably, I don't know, 500 pixels. That's probably too much, but we'll see. Yeah, that's fine. Let's pretend like that's what we want. Okay, and then I'm going to create either in Illustrator or in After Effects another shape layer. And so I need to deselect, because if I have a layer selected, then when I create a layer up here, it says Tool Creates Mask. You need to be Tool Creates Shape. And so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a new shape layer. And then on this new shape layer, now it says Tool Create Shape. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say right here like this. And you guys would spend more time to make sure that this is accurate. And I'm just going to make this like a totally different color. Let's make it like a purple or something, just so we can see what's going on. So now I have this. I'm going to rename this, right-click and rename, and go, let's go bar matte. Okay. And just for fun, I always label all of my mattes fuchsia, just so that I can tell where they are. So you can click on these boxes and start arranging things, tagging things based on color. So now that I have that, I can go back to my gradient, and I've got all of these things, but I don't see track matte. And so down here at the bottom, there's the toggle switches and modes button. This switches between switches and modes, which is why it's called that. So I do this until I see track matte, and then I'm going to grab the pick whip. Zoom in. So this is the pick whip next to this list. I could use the list or the pick whip, and I'm going to go from the gradient to the matte. And what it does is it hides the matte. Let me turn this back on. It hides the matte, and now the gradient is still moving, but it disappears when it goes outside of where the matte is. So if I turn the matte back on and put it down one, you'll see that the yellow only shows up inside of that purple. And the cool part about that, I'll just play it here and turn this back off. The cool part about this is the matte can also move. So I'll do another matte and I'll reveal these bars here. And so let's go like this, and let's create a new shape layer. Okay, and I'm going to do a big purple bar like this. Okay, and we'll call this rename, and let's call this, I don't know, speed matte. Okay, and we will turn it, thank you, we will turn it purple or fuchsia. Okay, and I'm going to put it underneath all that other stuff so we can see what's going on. This is where, okay, there we go. Great. Okay, so now the cool part about mattes is, unlike a mask, which is on an individual layer, I can have every single one of these bars track matted to the one matte. And so I can go like that, and they're all track matted to it. And now, when I change the position, they all show up or hide based on that. And so if I wanted to right-click, separate dimensions, and do wiggle, twice a second, move 200 pixels, just kind of guessing there. Okay, and then it'll hide and show randomly all of those different layers based on that.
If the mat moves with the item, would it be more beneficial to just make the mat apply the wiggle expression to that and then pick with it to everything that you want to be moved like that? Or
Give me an example of what you mean.
Like we have an asset where there's an energy bar, so inside that it's very similar to that, where like that yellow part is going to be moving. And in my head, the way you explained it, I would first apply the wiggle expression to the part that's moving, then put that on it. But would it be more beneficial to just make the mat and then apply the wiggle expression?
think either way would work.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not a specific order.
Okay.
I could have animated the purple that turned into the matte before I turned it into the matte or after, and it works just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the gradient one, you equipped it to which layer?
So the gradient one, I just made this, sorry, up here, I made this one, this purple one. And so the gradient is this, and it got pick whipped to that layer. So the rule with the rule with track mats is the thing that is being shown or hidden, the thing that's being clipped, you pick whip from that to the thing that's doing the hiding, to the mat.
Okay.
And so you go from you like it's and it shows up in this little list. So right down here is a list, and you can pick any of these things to be the mat, but you're kind of on each layer you're assigning a mat to that layer. And the basic rule is where it's transparent it hides, and where it's visible it shows. And that includes if you have like a fuzzy edge, or if you have like a semi-transparent thing that's like 50% opaque. And so I could also come in, I'll go down on this one. So I could also come in on this, and I could increase or decrease opacity on the one layer that's being used as a track mat, and all of the layers that are using that as a track mat will then gain that transparency. So this is probably the hardest concept to get, but the basic idea is if you guys have like this type of thing, and I'll do this one in a minute, right? This little guy right over here, you could just have a track mat that just moves up, and it would reveal this shape.
Oh, instead of having the shape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you could have a track mat that doesn't move, that's inside of this, and this shape with those 3 bars could move up and down, and it wouldn't go, it would be invisible as it left that shape. So you could animate this one either way.
You could do it either or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the basic rule is all of the layers can move. They all have their own independent transform controls, but the one that is acting as the track mat, where it is invisible, everything else that's using it as a track mat is invisible. Where it shows, everything else shows there. So that's the basics of that. Whereas if we wanted to reveal this line here, right, then I could take this line and have a shape that just moves across as a track mat and just reveal it that way. So we can do that right now. So let's come in here, and I'm going to file import file and go to math wheel. Okay, and composition retain layer sizes and open. Double click over here to bring it into my timeline. And then Fabrizio, tell me where those little lines are. You can also mouse over them. Okay, big graph line, there's one. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a shape that moves across, and then I'm gonna use that as a track mat. So I'm gonna start with, I've got this, so that's the line. Oh, these are all the lines. That's one.
Say line on the last word.
Okay, then let's do this. I can come up here and I can say line, and then everything that has the word line in it shows up. That seems, there we go. And just so I can keep track of things, I'm going to make all my lines yellow. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another shape layer, new shape layer. There we go. Okay, and inside of that shape layer, I'm just going to go like this with the pen tool and create a shape. And then inside of this, I can go to animate the path of that shape. So I can turn this on here, move my playhead, grab my selection tool, shift click to deselect, and then I can click to select it, and then shift click to select this. I'm just going to move this across like that. So now I just have animated that shape like that. If I don't want to do that, I could just make it really big and then just change the position, right? So either way is fine. And then I'm going to grab this guy, and I'm going to command click on each one of these and pick whip my shape layer. And let's turn this into purple, okay? And then wherever that layer goes, it reveals those lines. As you can see, they kind of draw on. And it's like, oh, that was really slow. So I can come back in here and I can speed that up. And it draws those lines like that. Questions on that?
So is this shape layer, is it masked or no? Like it's just regular?
So the shape layer doesn't have a mask on it,
Okay.
but it is acting as a track mat for those other layers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
How did you make it invisible again?
So when you create, the basics of that is this eyeball over here, this will toggle visibility.
Okay.
But when you pick whip something as a track mat, by default, it makes the track mat invisible.
Okay.
And you can go back and turn that back on if for some reason you want it visible. But by default, when you pick whip a track mat, the track mat layer becomes invisible. So then I can come in here like that, and then it just kind of draws on. And I can drag this. I have to select and hit U so I can get the keyframes. I can drag these keyframes around anywhere if I can get them with my, there we go. And they can happen at any point. So go like that, right? Or if for some reason I wanted to like have it go on and then off, then I can copy and paste. So it'll spill on and then it'll draw itself off like that. So that's one way to draw something onto the screen is you just leave it as a layer and then you use a track mat to kind of move stuff across it. Okay. I could design something in Illustrator. Like let's say that I wanted a bunch of random shapes. Illustrator's way better at that than After Effects is. I could design that in Illustrator and then import that, and I could drag that layer into this composition and use it as a track mat. So I don't have to make those things in After Effects if I don't want to. Okay, so that's track mats. Now I'm going to show you, and we did a wiggle expression question. Everybody understands wiggle expressions? Okay, track mats. So now I'm going to do a trim path. A trim path. Okay, let's go back to our HUD here. Okay, I'm just going to do a really simple thing. So I'm going to click here, and let's make a new shape layer. Okay, and I'm just going to draw a path here, like this. Okay, and I'm going to click on the blue word and get rid of the fill. And I'm going to click on the blue word and add a fill. Okay, and that's good enough for now. We can change the color to whatever we want, and you can change the stroke weight. Okay, so now we have a path. Okay, so if we go into the shape layer and go into contents, we now have this shape. Okay, and this shape it's got a path that you can animate, and it's got a bunch of things that you can do to the stroke. You could animate the color of the stroke, or the opacity of the stroke, or the width of the stroke. So if I wanted this to like pulse, then I could like go over at like 2 seconds, click to turn that on, bring this over, have it like get really big, bring this over, have it get really small, and the weight of the stroke will now animate, right? So anything with the stopwatch next to it, you can animate, okay? What we're gonna do with this as it's now a path, and this is very important, you have to click on the word contents. And with the word contents selected, then you can go to this add menu. It's this little circle with a triangle next to it, and you're gonna add a trim paths to it. So I'm gonna add trim paths. That will show up at the bottom of this, and anything that's above this trim paths will have this trim paths applied to it. And so it's really important that trim paths is at the bottom. If you accidentally, I'm gonna click Command Z here. If I had the shape instead of the content selected and I added the trim paths, then it'll put it inside of that shape, and so it won't be applied to any other shapes on this layer. That'll become more important later. If that happens, you can just click and drag this out, and then just change the order of it, and that's totally fine. You can just drag it around, okay? So trim paths has 3 things. We're going to talk about 2 of them first. So I started with this. This is called the start of this path, and then I clicked all of these things. This is the end of this path. So right now, start is at 0% and end is at 100%. If I take 100 down, then I'm trimming where the end is. If I take 0 on start up, then I'm trimming where it starts. And so if I, very simply, if I just want to draw this on, then I just turn end animation on, bring this down to 0, move my playhead, bring animation to 100, and it just draws itself on the screen. Now, the cool part about this is with this shape layer selected, if I make other shapes, then they will also automatically have this trim path applied to them. So now it draws all of them on. And like stuff like the star looks pretty cool, right? I'm going to change the color of the star so you can kind of see it. But like the more corners and things and curves that you have, the cooler that kind of looks. But it's one trim path for every shape that's on that layer. Questions on trim paths? Yes.
Is there an easy way if you want it to do like one shape at a time where you can?
If you want to do one shape at a time, you could have each one of those be on a separate layer with a trim path on its own layer, or you could have the trim path be inside of the shape rather than underneath all the shapes. And then you just animate each trim path by itself.
And then you just have to hit the K so then it goes to like the last one to start it?
If you wanted them to start. So if you wanted them to stagger, you could do it that way. Okay, questions on trim path? Because I'm about to show you something that looks really complicated, but is exactly the same thing. Good? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this wheel. And when you import this stuff from Illustrator, it rasterizes it. It's no longer vector. But it knows that it's vector. It's kind of a reference raster. And so I can take all of this stuff and I can explode it. So if we have, like here's the inner wheel, right? And so if I take this and I right click on it, then I can go to create shapes from vector layer. And when I do this, it's going to copy all of the vector paths from this Illustrator layer, create a new After Effects shape layer, and put all of those paths as shapes inside of that new content layer. So go like that. And now we have inner wheel outlines like this. And you'll notice that they kind of like exceeded because we probably had some sort of trim path or clipping path.
Yeah, clipping path.
Mask. Yeah, that's fine. So they kind of, so we can deal with that in a minute. But if I go like this, right, and I come into, I select contents, I've got each one of these is its own little thing. And each one of these has a path that we can animate and strokes that we can do things to, okay? But very simply, with content selected, I can go add trim paths, and then on trim paths, I can bring it back to the beginning here, and I can animate the end, bring that down to 0, and then I can move my playhead and bring that up to 100, and now the entire inside of that draws itself on. And if I do that faster, like this, it can make for a really smooth transition. So you can just have it kind of like draw itself on like that. Questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to do it one more time just in case. Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Mhm.
So for example, on the shape that was clip masked, but now it's not, if you do like a shift M, and then like this, if you do it in a way where like the shape is no longer connected and it's several different shapes, will it?
Each one will be its own path and will go start to end. So Shift M in Illustrator if you're doing the shape builder tool and you cut it and it creates different shapes rather than just cutting the edges off things, then they will all animate on at the same time.
So you have to make sure they're connected.
Make sure they're connected, or you can stagger them by putting each. I can click and drag these to their own layer if I want, or I can select it, and if I delete this, I could select this and put a trim path just right on here like this, and then it's inside of that now, and so now I can go like that and rewind this and go like this, and so it's only going to do at this point, it's only going to do that one little nut like that, and then I can take this trim paths, copy it to my clipboard, and I can paste it into each group, I believe. Yep. And now what you'll see is those two, in theory, should draw on one, and then the other one draws on. And so then I would just come in here, hit U to expose my keyframes, and I can just move these around to where they will draw on wherever I want them to. So if you have a bunch of little shapes because you've cut them up in Illustrator, that's fine. You just put the trim path inside of that group rather than outside of it. So outside will do everything at the same time. Inside will do each shape independently. Okay, so let's look at we'll do the tread here like this. So wheel tread, right click, create shapes from vector layer. Okay, and it hides the Illustrator layer and shows the other one. And so then we're going to come in like this, and we are going to, you guys talk me through it. What do I make sure that I have selected?
The shape, the outlines.
The contents, because you don't want the groups unless you want to do it individually. But I want to do all of these lines at the same time. So I'm going to do contents, okay? And what do I do next? Add.
And then
Trim paths. Okay, so now I've got a trim path at the bottom. What am I animating? Start and end. And in this case, start is already at 0, so we can go end, and then rewind a little bit, and move this to 0. And now we'll have that draws on,
That's sick.
right? So it's a really nice way to make stuff that already is designed well look really fancy, but it's fast. So you could assign somebody to all the assets that need to draw themselves on, and they could just open it, trim path, do the thing, blah, 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 save, close, open the next one, do. You probably bust all those out at the same time.
And if there's because we talked about on this one, there's the truck mat, and then there's also the trim path too. Would two different people do those, or?
That's up to you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a different way of thinking. Yeah.
Whatever you're, because as I've been playing with it, I've been having a hard time adding shapes or paths. So in order to do that, you have to go to layer and then add layer.
So you go to layer, new shape layer.
Okay, so you can't just start drawing on it.
You can, but if you have anything selected. So let me show you this. So where's our background? So background. Okay. So if for some reason I have our background selected, right? I've got our background selected. When I make a shape, it says tool create mask. And so I make that shape, and now the background is masked. I have a mask on the background. So if I press this, and if I deselect everything and nothing is selected, and I make a shape, then it will create a new shape layer for me and put that shape that I just did inside of it. So you just have to make sure you know what's selected, and you get used to looking at tool creates mask, tool creates shape. So you don't have to necessarily go to composition, new shape layer, but if you have something that's selected, it makes a mask instead of creating a new shape layer.
Another question. I know we talked about this last time, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So for the backgrounds, because all the backgrounds are very similar, do we want one person to do that, and then just copy paste, or do we want the time to change with each video, and so then would we be doing that
Yeah, so if the background, let's say, what is the background? What does it do?
I think the background.
So it's got everything in it.
Yeah.
So let's pretend it's its own, it's got a bunch of layers in it. If you animated that one time, instead of talking about it, I'll just do it here. So let's go to heads up display. So I'm going to go heads up display. Let's delete that craziness. Okay. So let's say I want to put a background in here. So what I'm going to do is not double click on a shape because then it brings that up. Okay. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to create a couple things in Illustrator. So let's grab that locked. Excellent. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to file save as, and let's do background grid. Okay. And so there's that. And then I'm going to unlock this, and I'm just going to delete the rest of this. I'm only doing this because I saved a copy of the file. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a couple new layers, and there's our halftone dots. So let's put that on its own layer. And then there's our grid line, and so let's put that on its own layer. Okay, and is this like just a gradient? Okay. I'm going to, that's fine. I'm not going to overdo it. Okay, so let's save this, and then we'll come over here, and let's go File, Import File at Command-I. And let's grab Background Grid, Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, Open, double-click, okay? And so I'm just going to put let's have the grid draw itself on. That'll be kind of crazy to see how that happens. So let's go Create, Convert Shapes from Vector Layer. Okay, and then let's go in here, Contents, add Trim Paths, and Trim Paths, and 0, and let's see how that looks. It's not that impressive. It's kind of boring, so let's do it a different way. Let's delete this and delete that, and let's turn the grid back on. And I'm just going to have it expand out from the center. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a circle like this. Okay, and let's give ourselves no stroke and a fill. And let's move this to the center. And this ellipse path, let's go animate the size to 0. About like that. And big. Like that. Okay, so now we have this circle that kind of expands like this. That's way too slow, so we'll speed that up. Okay, and I'm going to take my grid, and I'm going to say track matte on that circle. And now my grid expands from the center. Okay, but I want to have a little bit less of a hard line here. So I'm going to go over to Effects and Presets. I'm going to type in Gaussian Blur. Okay, I'm going to grab Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to drag it onto my track matte. And I'm going to drag the blurriness up a lot. So be a lot blurry. There we go. Okay. And then there's a little bit of an edge quality problem there. But anyway, I don't like the blurriness, so let's bring that down a little bit. Get rid of repeat there and hide this again. There we go. So that wipes on, and then we'll have our halftones, and we can just, what do we want to do with that? We'll just make a big giant shape and just move it across. So I'm going to deselect everything, click on rectangle, go like that, and then let's go, where's our So as that is about partway through, we'll go transform, position, and as that's finishing about here, we'll just move this over like that. Okay, grab this, bring it back to fit. Okay, so now we have that kind of slides over, and we'll do the same thing. Grab our halftones, pick up that shape layer there, and then we've got like that. So the nice thing about this is I now have, Command 0, I now have a background grid, and so anywhere that I want, I can just drag this into that and put it on the bottom and scale it up or scale it down to whatever I need to do. And it does all that animation for me, so I don't have to do it over and over again. So as that's happening, you can kind of see the grid. So you animate this one time, and you can just drag that into any composition. Same thing with the frame and everything else. So once you guys get all the stuff that like it's the same in every one, everybody can just drag that in, and all the keyframes and all the animation will be contained inside of that composition.
So I think Max has already done that. So we just get it from Max.
Yep.
Then everyone can have that file, and then they can just drag it.
Yep. Okay. 2 more things. I'll go really fast. Okay. So transition. So let's say that I want, I've got this heads-up display animation, and I've got this wheel. Okay. I'm going to create another composition. We'll just call this transition. Okay. And I can literally drag these down as if they were clips from something. And so let's go heads up display like this. Okay. And so I'm going to take this and we'll scale this down. Zoop. So I get that to be where it's going to be. And then let's hide this for a minute, and that is fine. Okay. And so these little bits where it says this triangle, right? That's the start and stop of that. And so if I drag this over, then it'll come on right there. And so that's a jump cut. But if I go to, let's see, get rid of these. Where are we? Where is it? I just had it up. Oh, there it is. Go to Effects and Presets, and you can find Transition. And so these will automatically transition for you if you want. And so you can come in and you can do like a block dissolve or a card wipe. A lot of these are going to look pretty cheesy, right? But there are somewhere else, animation presets. You've got dissolves and movement and wipes, and some of those are a little bit better. So if I want to come in here, I want to go like inky iris wipe, then I can just come in here and I can drag this on, and I just take it and I just drop it right on that layer, the green plus sign, and now it will animate that on for me. And so what I would do is I would just, and most of these will have a progress or a start and stop, and so you can speed it up or slow it down. There's basically an end or a beginning. And so you can just find, you can either do this in Premiere or DaVinci or whatever the video guys are kind of editing in, or you can do it in here and just give them the whole thing. And so I would find like one of these that kind of fits the style of what you're doing. Look for like a glitch one or a flicker or something like that. And then everybody does the same thing for transitions.
What about like pixelated iris wipe?
Yeah, let's take a look at it. So with this selected, I can come up here and I can grab all of these, shift click, and then delete them. And so now there's no more effects on this anymore. And so we could go pixelated iris wipe and drag that down like that. And it'll start wherever your playhead is. So my playhead was random, so I'm going to move it back over here like this, and then yeah, so that looks pretty good. And you could we could speed that up a little bit. And so I would have like rules where like every transition takes 15 frames or whatever it is, like whatever you guys think looks good.
If it's like you can do effects on just like one object, so say it's like the wheels and you need to just come in, or like something else switches, you can just do it on the one object instead of the whole.
Yeah, it'll go on a layer. So I'm doing it on an entire screen right now, an entire composition, but you could drag any of these transitions onto a single layer and it'll do it. Yeah. You can also, if you want to do it on a group of layers, you could select all of those, right click, pre-compose, and then drag it onto the pre-comp.
What does pre-compose mean?
It's like a group.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a group. And then the last thing you guys wanted me to show you was sequential stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have the spinning one in here?
Um,
It's this one, right?
yeah.
Okay. So I'll just do this really fast because this is,
like flips between the two on the side.
yeah, this is really straightforward. So physics animated, yep. And composition retained layer sizes, open. Double click. Okay, now we want to find stand one probably. Oh, I see. Okay. So panel one. I'll just do the panels for right now. So let's go panel, 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 like this. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those all next to each other. Let's say that we want them to be 2 frames. I'm pressing the plus button to kind of zoom in on this, and I want each one of these to be 2 frames long. So with them all selected, I'm going to press Command-Shift-D. What that does is it splits them at the playhead and makes a copy. It selects the copy so that when I hit delete, it's just the copies that go away. So now I have 3 layers that are 2 frames long, and I can just come in like this and separate them out like that. And then I can put, I'll show you how to do this in a minute, but then it's like, oh, that's way too fast, right? So then we can, lengthen them out however we want. And it'll kind of go like that. Okay, so now we have this kind of like that, right? Now, here's the tricky part. The tricky part is to get this to loop. And I have this if you go to coreykerr.com/course. I'll show you where this is so you guys can find it again. There's a bunch of different ways to loop things. I'm going to show you the way that I prefer, but you could do others as well. So go to looping. Tell me if you guys see it before me. Here it is. Okay. So you have the loop out expression, the time remap loop out, or the duplicate, or the interpret footage. A lot of people will do interpret footage. I prefer time remap. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new composition. We'll drag our animations into that composition, and then outside of that composition, we'll loop out. Okay, so that's just where that is. So I'm going to grab these like this, shift-click, right-click, pre-compose. Okay, and then we'll go looping. You can name it whatever you want. Looping grid or whatever. Okay, and when we click that, make sure to move all attributes into the new composition. Okay, now if I double-click on this, I just have those 3 layers. Okay, and so I'm going to go back into this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add by right-clicking and going to enable time remapping. Okay, so right-click, time, enable time remapping, and what we do is we now have this, and this will control time. And so I'm going to start here, and I'm going to get to where it finishes. And it'll disappear. So I'm going to get to this last one, add a keyframe here, okay? And then at the end of this, I need to jump all the way to the end. I need to delete this keyframe. Okay, and so we'll go back to the front. All the way. Okay, that's going to take too long. That's where I like a full keyboard because I can just press the home button. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the front, and I'm just going to option click here, and I'm going to type loop out, quote inside of those, and do cycle. Go. And now it will loop through those time remapped keyframes over and over and over again.
And And if you wanted it to ping pong, you could ping pong that,
Yep.
so it wouldn't like.
Yep, so you could go ping pong in here instead, and now it'll go back and forth. Looks like it's dancing.
And you can do that to the stands as well. So that-
Yep, yep, and you could put them inside of the same composition and have them all line up the way you want, or they could be in their own composition, however you wanted to do that.
When you were first, I think you were like you were putting them all together and then you made a copy. Was that Command U that you did to do that?
To make a copy of them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You-
I'll do that one more time.
Yeah.
So stands, I'm gonna go like this, and let's go, and I'm gonna zoom in with the plus button, and let's make these 10 frames long. Okay, so I've got them selected. I press Command-Shift-D. Command-Shift-D will split at the playhead and duplicate, and then it selects the duplicates, and then I hit delete, and it deletes the extra ones. And so then I can come in like this. There's another way to do this that I'll show you that is really new. Make these yellow. Is if you hold Command Option, you'll see, let me zoom in. If you hold Command Option, you get this like stagger thing. And what it does is it'll stagger all the layers for you. So you can come out and just Command Option and then just drag it, and it'll drag them out for you and stagger them. And then you've got, that shifts around. You'd want them to line up, obviously, but. Okay, so that's sequential frames, transitions, exploding AI layers into shape layers, and then doing a draw on with a trim path, the wiggle expression, and track mats. Any questions on any of those? All right. Shut this down and upload it then.